episode 195, which is a Girl Take the Lead soundbite, which is a shorter episode that may be a bit more about a topic we've covered or quick inspiration, like our episode today. And I'm your host, Yo Kenny. This month, we've been talking about grief, and this episode could be an example of anticipatory grief because we're talking about Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, who recently, on October 1st, celebrated his 100th birthday. You know, there are a ton of things to admire about him. I recently shared some of them with some millennials I know who said, "Wow, I had no idea." So I'll take the opportunity today to share some of my learning with you about this great man. Enjoy the listen, and here you go. Here are some facts about President Carter. He defeated Gerald Ford in the 1976 election, and that was the first election I ever got to vote in. I was so excited. Gerald Ford was the 38th president upon the resignation of President Richard Nixon on August 9th, 1974. And Ford was a Republican from Michigan, and he had been appointed vice president on December 6, 1973, following the resignation of Spiro Agnew from the office. It was pretty crazy in the 70s. He had one of the highest approval ratings when taking office at 75%, and then on the very low side when he left at about 34%. He is the longest living president in history. He was born and raised in Plains, Georgia, which had a population of 653 people at the time of his election. And that is a small town.
Oh, yeah.
He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1946 and joined the U.S. Navy submarine service. Carter served on the submarine SSK-1 as an executive officer, engineering officer, and electronics repair officer. He also served in the Atlantic and Pacific fleets, rising to the rank of lieutenant. Carter's awards include the American Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal, China Service Medal, and National Defense Service Medal. As a submarine officer, he also earned the Dolphin Badge. So, what is a Dolphin Badge, you might ask? It's a uniform breast pin worn by qualified submariners to indicate their submarine expertise. The Dolphin is one of the Navy's oldest warfare devices and a source of pride for the submarine community. The qualification process to earn the Dolphin pin is extensive and can take about a year. It covers almost every system on the submarine. In February 2005, the USS Jimmy Carter was commissioned. It is the Seawolf class, which is a class of nuclear-powered submarines in the United States Navy. The USS Jimmy Carter is the third and final submarine in the class and does secret missions. Carter's knowledge of nuclear reactors and energy was useful when he became president in 1977. He also helped save a Canadian nuclear reactor after a meltdown. And this man was all about peace. Carter pardoned all Vietnam War draft evaders on his second day in office. He successfully pursued the Camp David Accords, the Panama Canal Treaties, and the second round of the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, or SALT talks. He also confronted stagflation. The Camp David Accords were a pair of political agreements made by Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin on 17 September 1978, following 12 days of secret negotiations at Camp David. The Panama Canal Treaties were signed by President Jimmy Carter and the Panamanian Chief of Government on September 7, 1977. The treaties established the governing standards for the Panama Canal until 1999 and guaranteed the canal's neutrality. The treaties were controversial in the United States, particularly among conservatives. The Senate's approval of the treaties was difficult, with strong opposition from the public and Congress. However, the Senate ratified the treaties by a vote of 68 to 32, and Carter signed the implementation legislation into law on September 27, 1979. The SALT talks were a series of negotiations between the United States and the Soviet Union to limit their nuclear weapons. And stagnation in the 1970s was a period with both high inflation and uneven economic growth. High budget deficits, lower interest rates, the oil embargo, and the collapse of managed currency rates contributed to stagflation. He created a national energy policy that included conservation, price control, and new technology. His administration established the U.S. Department of Energy and the Department of Education. Building on important environmental work as president, Carter installed the first solar panels at the White House and saved millions of acres in Alaska from development. This was long before climate change was widely recognized. The end of his presidency was marked by the Iranian hostage crisis, an energy crisis, the 3 Mile Island accident, the Nicaraguan Revolution, and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. In response to the invasion, Carter escalated the Cold War by ending détente, imposing a grain embargo against the Soviets, enunciating the Carter Doctrine, and leading the multinational boycott of the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow. He lost the 1980 presidential campaign in a landslide to Ronald Reagan, the Republican nominee. Yeah, he wasn't very popular with a lot of these things. Post-White House, he established the Carter Center to promote and expand human rights. And in 2002, he received a Nobel Peace Prize for related work. He traveled extensively to conduct peace negotiations and monitor elections. Carter is a key figure in the nonprofit housing organization Habitat for Humanity. He's also written several books, ranging from political memoirs to poetry, while continuing to comment on global affairs, including 2 books on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Okay, so as if that was not enough, I came to admire him greatly as I watched a documentary on my flight to Memphis recently called Jimmy Carter, Rock and Roll President. And you don't need to go to Memphis to watch it. It looks like it's streaming on most platforms, and I'll have some in the show notes for you. These are some of my takeaways from the film. 1, Jimmy saw music as the one thing we all have in common, no matter where we live. And he loved all kinds of music. And it's what he says held America together, no matter the genre. 2, some of his closest friends were musicians. Willie Nelson. Let's start there. Carter and Nelson were close friends and would sometimes perform together. Carter said this: during the Iranian hostage crisis, I would play Willie Nelson music primarily so I could think about my problems and say a few prayers. And there was Johnny Cash. Did you know that Johnny Cash and President Jimmy Carter were cousins? And Greg Allman, The Southern rock group was known for being rowdy and doing drugs and getting into fights. Just a whole different kind of thing, really, than any of the other artists. Other politicians would have considered that political kryptonite, but not Carter. In the film, he credits the band with helping him drum up support so he could reach the White House. Greg Allman, in fact, was among Carter's first guests after his election win. Bob Dylan, oh my goodness. He said the story of the first time he and Carter met, the first thing he did was quote, "My song's back to me." It was the first time that I realized my songs had reached into basically the establishment world. He called Carter, quote, "a kindred spirit to me of a rare kind." Carter also hosted many musicians at the White House, including those who helped him get elected. Carter also hosted many musicians at the White House, including those who helped him get elected in 1976. Carter also hosted a White House Jazz Fest in 1978, featuring performances from Dizzy Gillespie, Herbie Hancock, Max Roach, and Sonny Rollins. Carter was also a musician who enjoyed playing and repairing guitars. Number 3, there's a story in Willie Nelson's memoir that he smoked pot on the White House roof with one of Carter's aides. But Jimmy corrects him to say it was his son Chip, not one of his aides. Oh, gosh. Number 4, he used music as a marketing strategy to attract voters to his campaign events. It was his idea, and he was the first to do it. Some of the musicians who performed at fundraising concerts for Carter included the Allman Brothers Band, Marshall Tucker Band, Leonard Skinner, Charlie Daniels, and John Denver. This is such a way to win this marketer's heart over. And number 5, I loved it in the film when he was committed to getting the hostages home alive, and he said, quote, "What is the right thing to do is not always what is politically advantageous." There's a story before Jimmy Carter, rock and roll president, premiered. Jason Carter, the president's grandson, was asked about the title. Jason said this, that his grandfather said that the 2 things he most was proud of in the world are, 1, having a U.S. naval submarine named after himself, and 2, being called the rock and roll president. And most of us know that he's hanging on so he can cast his vote for Kamala and see her elected president. As we end today's episode, I'd like to share the following words from President Carter. And I'm thinking if we asked him what he'd tell his 20-something self, it might be something like this, quote, "Earlier in my life, I thought the things that mattered were the things that you could see, like your car, your house, your wealth, your property, your office. But as I've grown older, I've become convinced that the things that matter most are the things that you can't see. The love you share with others, your inner purpose, your comfort with who you are." And I love this one, which he said, and I think it's about generosity in leadership. Quote, "A strong nation, like a strong person, can afford to be gentle, firm, thoughtful, and restrained. It can afford to extend a helping hand to others. It is a weak nation, like a weak person, that must behave with bluster and boasting and rashness and other signs of insecurity. And lastly, I love this one about friendship. Quote, I'm proud of my relationship with the Allman Brothers Band. They are good people. They are my friends. And anybody who wants a president who doesn't like music like this and who doesn't like people who make music like this should simply vote for another man. Thank you for listening today. We sure hope you enjoyed this episode and found it inspirational. If you did, please leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts, tell a friend about us, or join our public Facebook group, Girl Take the Lead. We also have a YouTube channel where your subscription would be appreciated. Once you're on YouTube, search at Girl Take the Lead. And we've recently expanded to YouTube Music where you can find a video of this episode. You can also check out our new store on our website, girltaketheleadpod.com/shop, and plan to return to it as we'll update our products on an ongoing basis. So here are 3 takeaways from our episode. 1, Jimmy Carter certainly deserves to be called the rock and roll president. He saw music as the one thing we all have in common, no matter where we live. 2, he inspires us to have faith, do what we believe to be right, no matter how much others see this as inappropriate. 3, while some will not look kindly on his time as president, he is an aspiring, decent human being. Thank you, Mr. President, for all you have done. I am already grieving our loss. Our next episode will kick off some episodes about technology and conflict. Whoa, what a great combination. So please join us again and talk to you soon. Bye.